Good evening. Welcome in. This is The Spread. I am Cameron Tarrant. With me, as always, co-host SoCon John Hooper. SoCon John, man, how's it going, buddy? How you doing?
I'm doing good. Ready to get this football season underway. So
Absolutely. Spring football, man. I can't believe it's finally here. We've been talking about it and have been
it's going to
looking
be a
forward.
thing.
Yeah, it's going to be a thing, and a lot of people were probably predicting that it might not work out. But here we are. Here we are.
Yeah, I mean it's too late to turn back now. I mean, Chattanooga's already tried to turn back, so I'll be interested to see. One of the things I'll be interested to watch this first week will be, or as we get further into the season, will teams that don't have a chance to maybe make the playoffs, will they opt out? And because it's different in FBS football. There's a lot of teams that have a chance to make a bowl in a year like this, but only 16 teams will get in the FCS playoffs.
Right.
So I don't know, because there is a fall season going to be right behind it. So I feel like I have a good feeling about the SoCon, other than a couple schools that Chattanooga being one of them, just because of the unknown with them. But
yeah,
for the most part, I think we're going to have barring the unforeseen, I think this is going to be a little bit easier to keep up with as far as COVID is concerned, because other teams have already done it in our state, and it's a little bit easier to manage with football.
Yeah, I get that, and there were a lot of people thinking that this wasn't going to happen. And look, there's a lot of FCS schools, a lot of conferences that have just decided, they're not gonna play, which is it's fine, it's whatever. But then you've got other conferences and leagues, much like the Southern Conference, that was like, nope, we're going to do this thing. We're going to play.
I read where the Southern Conference is the only conference that is complete participation among its, member football playing institutions.
Yeah.
So like every other conference has at least one team that's opted out. The Big Sky is crazy. I don't know if you looked at it or not, but I think both Montana schools are not playing.
Which is crazy, because Montana State is one of the, Montana both are blue bloods in that conference. So that's big. But look, you've got teams like North Dakota State, South Dakota State, James Madison, some of the real big powerhouses that are going to play this spring as well. Yeah.
And you mentioned it at lunch earlier today. I think James Madison's a 40-point favorite in their opener against Morehead State.
Yeah.
I mean,
Morehead State.
And another thing we should probably touch on is, why isn't ESPN covering this? I mean,
yeah, maybe they will, but this first weekend, you'd think that there would be a couple of games on TV, and they're not. All the games this weekend are on ESPN Plus. You have to have an ESPN Plus subscription in order to watch them, which is just crazy to me.
I feel like that's not very fair because I understand why it's not on in the fall. I get it, because of FBS football, I get. But there's no reason this time of year, when ESPN does not cover the NCAA tournament. I mean, other than they had the women's tournament. But after that, I don't know what you would put on. They don't put on like college baseball regularly. I mean, the SEC network does some, but it's not. They might have one game a week, but is it really that hard to find time to get a FCS football game on?
Yeah, I don't understand. Hopefully, maybe by the end of the season, they're going to have ESPN's going to carry some of these games, especially some of the bigger ones. I mean, heck, I'd love to see some of the Southern Conference teams get on national television or at least something. I'm sure ESPN's got to put something. Like they could find a way to put something on ESPNU, ESPN2, even ESPN News at this point.
They've got like 6 network, like they really almost have like the ESPN Ocho. I mean, to me, to say you have to, a lot of people do have smart TVs and they can stream it, but there's a difference in saying that you're on one of the family networks on like an actual national, TV. If you didn't have a smart TV, what I mean? Like, and what's going to make me mad is they're going to have like, poker or pool on.
Yeah, instead of FCS football. I get that. Well, John, we're going to talk a lot of FCS football tonight, week 1 of the spring season kicking off this weekend. We're going to go through the Southern Conference schedule, take a look at some other games outside of the Southern Conference, make some picks on some games tonight as well. So looking forward to all that. But before we jump into FCS football, let's take a look in the world of college hoops right now. And John, one of the big things going on this week, one of the big storylines, big controversies around the world of college basketball is the story of freshman Duke player Jalen Johnson opting out right here in February. We're a couple of weeks away from the end of the regular season, and Jalen Johnson is opting out, saying he's just going to prepare for the NBA draft come this summer. I mean, Duke's not very good this year. They're like, at 500 or something like that?
They're not. I think they're 9-8.
Just over 500 then. I mean, it's not like theoretically Duke still does have a chance to get to the NCAA tournament. They'd have to pull off a miracle of some sort and just kind of run their way through the ACC tournament, which probably won't happen. But, I mean, theoretically, they still have a shot. It's a little shot, but they still have a shot to get there. And here, all of a sudden, a couple of weeks before the end of the year, and freshman player Jalen Johnson deciding he's going to opt out. Now, there's a lot of controversy on social media right now of, one thing, player's choice, let him do whatever he's going to do. He's getting ready to go make a bunch of money in the NBA. That's his decision. He don't want to take the risk of getting hurt. On the other hand, it kind of seems like he's quitting on his team right here and right at the end of the season, pretty much. Your thoughts, John?
Absolutely, it does. And you talk about, it's so ironic, like the irony of mid-major basketball in comparison. I mean, there's a lot of kids that work while they've waited to have an opportunity just to play in a conference tournament for a 1-bid league. And then you've got the other dynamic of these people, this guy at Duke is just looking for the quickest way out of Durham to get his NBA career really started. And I don't know really what that says about, I think in football it's more looked at, but like the character issue, like no one wants somebody on their team that just kind of says, all right, guys, deuces, I'm out. Like that's not a good trait to have for any athlete. And I can't imagine that, like, I'm looking at it from covering mid-major basketball, like the 2 guys I interviewed this week. I can't imagine what they would say to somebody, one of their teammates, if they opted out. Like, who does?
Yeah, look, and maybe it's a different dynamic at the mid-major level, as it is at a blue blood institution or a top tier institution program like Duke.
But then we reward them with extra bids to the NCAA tournament, and these other kids over here that warrant probably more being in it. You leave some really good teams out of the tournament that should be in it. That's the whole problem I got with that. And
look, I understand that too. And if I were one of his teammates, you want to say, okay, you want to be there and support him and say, all right, we wish you the best. We want you to go on and do great things at the next level. At the same time, come on, you're two weeks away from the season being.
But that's my thing is, like, if you're going to opt out, why not do it before the season starts?
Well, maybe maybe he thought that Duke, that the program was going to be a lot better than they turned out to be this year. And I mean, who knows? There could be a number of things. Maybe there's some COVID concern, but on that same note, if there's COVID concern, he should have opted out back at the beginning of the year.
That would have been more of a concern earlier in the year, right? I mean,
right.
The numbers nationwide are starting to go down. I mean, now would be the time you'd want to come in and play. I mean, like,
yeah.
I mean, we talked about it in comparison to football. I do a little bit understand football more because it's a physical sport. You do run the risk a lot more of a serious injury in football. That is an absolute fact. And if you're not going to play in a playoff bowl game, I get it. I don't agree with it still, but I get it more than I do for basketball. That just didn't make sense to me, especially in February.
Yeah, look, it just in one way it sort of rubs you the wrong way. On the other hand, you can kind of see it. Look, we were talking about it at lunch. There's a similar dynamic, not quite as this similar. There's a little bit of difference, but there are some similarities with what you see in college football, with guys opting out at the end of the year. Don't want to play in that bowl game, but at the same time, to argue against that, those guys are opting out of a meaningless bowl game. It's not like they're going for a championship. Now, do I like it? No, personally, I wish they wouldn't, but that's their decisions to play. That's fine. But this is a completely different situation, because here's a kid, they're still in the middle of the season, and he's deciding to opt out.
What about Zion Williamson? Remember when his Nike came apart and he got hurt and people were saying he should opt out, yet he came back. He was present in the NCAA tournament later that season, and he had more of a right to opt out than this guy, but he came back and played the year. I mean, so that's what I mean, there's an example, not 2 years ago or whatever, that right there, or 3 years ago, right there in Duke's backyard, that this guy could have chosen to go to the NBA because he was going to be the number one pick. But I think that showed more, and I don't know the kid, so it's unfair for me to make a judgment on his character, because he might be a great person. I don't know. But I just think it doesn't send the right message.
I get it, and maybe he had conversations with his teammates before he made the decision. Had conversations with Coach K and some of the other coaches before he made that decision. We don't know, and we don't know exactly the full extent to the decision he made, but it does from an outside.
If Duke were 16-1, I wonder if he makes the same decision.
Probably not. But you don't know, and you can never fully know that. So just that's an interesting conversation. I mean, it's an interesting topic that's definitely been brewing around social media. People arguing back and forth about it or not. Look, I wish Jalen Johnson all the best. I hope he can get to the NBA and make a ton of money. But if I'm an NBA owner, you also kind of have to look at it like, do I want a guy that's just gonna?
Is he gonna do Is he gonna want a trade? Right, when it's not happening. So I think you run the risk of that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't really know if we were going to talk about this today, but we can touch on it later. Just going back to FCS football, did you see where the Eagles traded Carson Wentz today?
I did. Former North Dakota State quarterback was with Philadelphia, has been traded to Indianapolis. And so Jalen Hurts, the former Alabama-Oklahoma quarterback, will
Yeah.
be taking the reins for the Eagles offense, which, that's a great story for him. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's a great story for him. All right, John. So we move from the Jalen Johnson story. Let's get into just some local basketball, what's been taking place. Clemson's had a couple of games off. Their Pittsburgh game has been postponed. The Notre Dame game also postponed. Their last game they played was last weekend in a big win, a great win for them over a Georgia Tech team that they just really haven't had much success against in a couple of years, and able to beat them pretty handily at home last weekend.
Probably sealed their NCAA tournament berth with that victory. I think Nick Honor making the big shot there.
Yeah,
I think that game solidified their inclusion into the NCAA tournament. Now, the only unfortunate thing is we saw them struggle last time after a COVID stoppage. Was, I think, their only one of the season, the first time. And then they came back and played Virginia, I think it was.
Yeah.
And that didn't go so well. So I understand that Brownell is pretty he's concerned. Any coach would be concerned about they were starting to play well again, and then all of a sudden you got another stoppage.
Another break, yeah. And their next game won't be until next Wednesday when they travel up to Winston-Salem, take on a much just banged up and just, that Wake Forest has just not had a successful year this year.
Yeah, and they've got the right coach in place, I think, in Steve Forbes. But I mean, it was going to be a tall order.
Yeah.
Even if they returned Olivier Sarr, who is at Kentucky now, they weren't and was their best player last year. I don't think that would have made a huge difference. But certainly, you add on top of that the injuries and everything that's happened with them. They've been in some close games. I mean, who is it? Florida State. They took to overtime last week. Florida State's a very good basketball team. We saw what they did to Virginia the other night. So, yeah, I mean, they've been in some close games, but
yeah.
It's just been a tough season, and I because I know Coach Forbes, and I certainly respect and consider him a friend. I would have hoped they would have done better, but I think he'll get it turned around.
Yeah. So Clemson, 3 regular season games left, Wake Forest, and then back-to-back home games against Miami and then Pitt to end their regular season, get ready for the ACC tournament coming up in March. John, from Clemson, let's move over just a little bit here, more locally around us in the Southern Conference. Take a look at what has transpired in the SoCon here recently. Bit of some struggles for the Bucks of ETSU here lately. Yeah. We'll talk about that. VMI getting a big win last night.
How about VMI beating the 2 favorites to win the SoCon?
Which is you can't overlook that team, especially once the tournament comes. That they're going to be a dangerous opponent for anybody. And then Furman looks like maybe they're finding their groove here late in the season, getting ready to move in to the SoCon tournament. But John, ETSU, man, it has been a struggle here of late. The Bucks have lost 5 of their last 7, which is just head scratching. Because here's a ETSU team that beat Furman not too long ago, just a few weeks ago, up in Johnson City, and ever since that, it's sort of falling apart at the seams for them. It seems like.
Right. I think the only wins that they had since that Furman game were Mercer and VMI, if I'm not mistaken. And then, if you look at their past, other than the Wofford game, if you look at their past 3 losses, I believe they came by 2, and one was a buzzer beater, another 2-point game. That's 4 points, and then last night was a 5-point game.
Last night was a 7-point loss to Mercer.
A 7-point loss. So 11 points and a total of 11 points in the last 3 losses. And really, if you go back further, let's see. They really haven't been.
The last game they won was about a week or so ago when they just blew out Wofford.
Right.
And then they dropped 2 games, Chattanooga and Mercer, back to back. But they got swept by Chattanooga in both of the games they played against them. Even lost. I mean, look, the Citadel puts almost 80 points on the Bucks a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, it's been a bit of issue, and scoring points has been a bit of an issue for them so far, or like later.
That was their problem early in the season. Was points, and then they sort of got it going when right after they played Furman the first time. I was like, well, this team's starting to get it, and for whatever reason, now they've kind of, after they beat Furman, I was like, well, they're going to turn it on right now.
Yeah.
And they were playing. I think they beat Mercer or somebody the next time, and then they suffered that loss. I think may have been at the Citadel, and from that point on, other than the Wofford game, it's been a real struggle for them.
Yeah.
And I don't really know why, unless it has something to do with they're very talented, but bringing in a whole different team is so hard to do.
Yeah.
And just to get them to play together consistently. They've got talent, but in basketball, it's not unlike football. Sometimes in football, it's easier to get talent to equate especially if you have an offensive and defensive lines to begin with, than basketball. But on the same hand, they could have won either of those Chattanooga games. I mean, the one where we talked about at lunch, where the timeout's called, the guy makes a shot. I mean,
look, they lost the 2 games to Chattanooga. They lost by a combined 4 points. I mean, either one of those games can go the other way.
Right. So, I mean, when you look at it that way, I mean, the regular season's probably out the window now. But
yeah,
I mean, really, that it's nice to win the regular season. I'm not going to diminish it, but it's going to come down to what happens in Asheville. And if they can string together some victories before they get there, I think they should be fine.
Yeah, they should be. A team right now that's playing just lights out, VMI, and they got a big win last night, John, in their home place against the leader of the league in UNCG. I mean, a game in which it really wasn't even close.
No, about early in the second half, I think they came out and hit 2 3. I believe it was 43-40 at halftime. VMI.
Yep.
And VMI hit 2 threes right off the bat to open the second half.
Yep.
And then from there, they kind of distanced themselves a little bit and maintained that cushion for a good portion of the second half. I think it got up to 16 or 17 at one point, as much as a 17 or 16-point lead. But just VMI, when they're hitting their shots, they're so tough to beat. And for whatever reason, they just play really well at home. I think, but they're on the road. They're like 1-9,
which is so weird. They're like one of the worst road teams in the league.
And the only road win I think is Wofford that they have. So
no, I believe you're right. I believe you're right about that 84-80 win over the Terriers a couple of weeks ago. But you mentioned it just a few minutes ago. This is a team that has now knocked off 2 of the teams that were listed to be the favorites of the league in UNCG and Furman.
Right. And, I mean, that gives you an idea of how crazy the league has been this year. Even I look at a team like the Citadel, who beat Wofford and beat East Tennessee State, two of the other, better teams in the league, or two of the teams thought of coming into the season that would obviously compete for the title. And Chattanooga has really been a story, I think. As much as VMI, I would give Coach of the Year probably to either Dan Earl of VMI or maybe even Lamont Paris of Chattanooga, because simply stated, they only had 7 players dressing at one point when they started conference play. I mean, that's
incredible. It's incredible
to do what they've done so far, and you really could have lost last night. Down 12 and closed the game with a 12-0 run, I believe, to force overtime. And that gives you an idea of kind of the way Western Carolina season's going, and right now how Chattanooga's season's going.
Yeah, Western, it looked like the Catamounts were going to get a win. I mean, they were leading most of the game last night against Chattanooga, and then Chattanooga able to hold them off, get a lead, force it to overtime, and then put it away from there. So it's been a tough season so far for Western Carolina. And we've joked about it. It may not get any better for Western Carolina moving in to football season starting Saturday. So,
and the thing about it is, they play without their point guard, Mason Faulkner, last night, and in a lot of ways, I think for most of the game, they played better. They looked, they were. I didn't see the game, but I was paying attention a little bit to Scott Keeler's. He was at the Furman game, and he had the game on, and I saw bits and pieces of it, and they look really good. I mean, so I don't know if that changes. Like, will Mason play less, or what happens from here on out? But they certainly seemed they've got talent. I mean, there's no question about it. They for whatever reason, it's just they haven't had that chemistry that they had last year in which they won 19 games. And I think a lot of that has to be due to the guys they lost in Carlos Dotson and Ano Steger.
Yeah. And then there's one team right now, John, that maybe is starting to find a little bit of a groove. They've kind of been up and down, showing flashes of what they're capable of, and then just coming back and having a poor performance. But, here, past couple of games, it looks like Furman's really maybe starting to find that groove at the right time heading into the SoCon tournament just a couple of weeks away.
You remember a couple of years ago when Clemson won the national championship? I guess was it 2018 in football, and a lot of, for a lot of that season, they looked not like they could play better, but you knew they had the talent. Like they hadn't put it all together.
Yeah.
So part of me thinks that the same dynamic is happening with like Furman, little by little.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Clemson gets in the playoff, and they just they're awesome. Whatever, like they just happen to put it all together at the right time. I think part of what the pandemic has done is kind of forced teams. It's kind of forced Furman not to have that peak too early.
Yeah.
And so, even though it was they've had some games postponed, they've had a week off here and there, I think it's actually in the long run probably going to help them more, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because they were playing really well when they played Alabama, and then all of a sudden they kind of hit. I mean, every time you get in conference play, it's always going to be like that, though.
Yeah. And especially in a league where literally any team can, at any particular day, can beat you. I mean,
I think I'm right by saying that I think Samford and Western Carolina, maybe the Citadel, are the only 3 teams that have a losing record. Is that right? 7 or 8 of the 10 teams have winning records, I believe.
So Western has a losing record. Samford has a losing record overall. Are you talking about
overall?
Just in league play?
No, overall.
So there's only two programs that have a losing record, and that's Western and Samford. Now the Citadel has a losing record in league play, but overall they're 11-9.
Even I know that there's been some weaker opponents played, but I mean you don't find that much. I think I heard somebody say yesterday that the SoCon was ranked as the 11th best conference in the country, which is
That's awesome.
Say what you will about teams beating up on each other, but
right.
I mean, like VMI could have beaten Virginia Tech. We saw it early in the year.
Yeah.
Virginia Tech's ranked. Furman could have beaten Alabama. There's been a few of those. Like the only loss that Belmont has is to Samford. Like literally, they're 21-1, like getting votes, and their only loss is to Samford. So, I mean, that's remarkable in and of itself. But so there's been situations like that where the SoCon has looked really good outside of its own conference.
Yeah. So we'll see. Furman, Alex Hunter, Bothwell, Noah Gurley, all having particularly good nights against the Bulldogs last night at home at Timmons. Not a particular good night or good performances out of Heen and Clay Mounts, but got a little bit of bench production, which is going to be key moving into the tournament.
Yeah, Clay was, he had eight boards and 4 assists and a block, which he didn't get it wasn't his best, obviously, scoring night, but he did that in 28 minutes. So his contributions were in other places. So, if he's getting, I think Coach Ritchie is like this, as long as he's contributing somewhere, like rebounds, he had 8, which is the team high, and 4 assists was second to only Bothwell last night. So, he only shot it 3 times, three shots. He only take 3 shots. So,
and I find Garrett Heen, man, I find it incredible that he didn't even take a shot the entire night,
which is incredible. I mean, like,
for a starter, not to even take. He was 1 for 2 from the line. Like that was it.
He played 13 minutes and did not take a shot from the field. He hit a free throw, but he did not shoot. So interesting. But, and Jalen Slauson comes off the bench, a solid performance. It was a little slow for him to get going, but I think he scored all 8 in the second half.
Yeah, he got it going there.
And so, Noah Gurley's really playing well lately. I don't know what's gotten he and Alex Hunter. I mean, they've it's funny because Alex Hunter I had interviewed on the night before the Samford game for a story, and he goes out and hits 7 threes. I mean, Coach Ritchie may want me to interview him more as this season goes along. But I mean, he's just like, he said it's been kind of an adjustment for him. It's not really in it. His personality is more got other guys up, but he's had to learn how to shoot, to be a scorer. And I mean, I didn't realize till last night he's hit 197 3-pointers in his career, which Furman will now have 3 in the last 4 years to have hit 200 or more 3-pointers in their careers. Devin Sibley did it in 17-18. Obviously last year Jordan Lyons, and now he needs Alex Hunter needs 3 more to do that. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that's a rarity in school history, to have it that close together where you got guys.
Right. Furman got Mercer this weekend, and then finish up with VMI, the Citadel, and then a big game against Wofford to close out the regular season. John, right now, though, as it stands, the Southern Conference race, it's tight coming down the stretch. The regular season title on the line. It's a tight race. You've got you've got one, two, three, four. You got five teams. No, excuse me, four. No, five teams that are within 2.5 games of the leader, with a few games left to play. Which, I mean, it's incredible. Wofford just a half game behind UNCG. Furman and Chattanooga both just a single game behind. ETSU a couple games behind, and then VMI 2.5 games behind. So VMI still has theoretically a little bit of a shot. They will need some teams ahead of them to stumble, but it's a tight race coming down to the end of the regular season here.
So, okay, so Wofford's got who? Western Carolina, Samford, and Furman left. Mm-hmm. UNCG has Chattanooga and East Tennessee State.
Both of those games, I mean, if ETSU's on their game and if Chattanooga's on their, those are both games in which UNCG could slip.
So here's the thing. Furman split with UNCG. Okay, so Furman split with ETSU. ETSU's already beat UNCG. If UNCG loses again, Furman would have the tiebreaker there. And Furman's only going to play Chattanooga once. So that the ETSU series, they already would have a tiebreaker with East Tennessee State on Chattanooga. And with Chattanooga, let's see, depending on what happens in the UNCG game, let's say if Chattanooga loses, I think UNCG would get the sweep in that one. So that, there's a lot of things. Like, there's a lot that could happen, but it almost is like, since Furman's only playing 16 games, they're gonna need UNCG to lose at least one more, and Furman would have to win out.
Yeah,
because the Wofford dynamic would take care of itself. Because Furman could essentially hand Wofford a 6th conference loss at the end of the year, which would be enough to put them on percentage points with only 4 should they win out over Wofford. So, like, if Furman wins out, they can do no worse than 2nd.
If they win out.
Right.
They got to get through those next 4 games.
Well, that's easy. I mean, yeah, of course that's easier said than done.
Yeah, right.
But
look, they're all winnable games because what I say, I mean,
I'm not sure Furman won't be favored in all of them.
The Wofford game, I think, is the one game where I think Wofford's probably the favorite. Look, I mean, they got Mercer VMI and the Citadel, I think, are all very winnable, obviously. And then, look,
Mercer's a tricky one. That one's tricky.
Yeah,
Mercer's good. Maybe they played a little bit under what I thought they'd be this year, but they're still really good. The Citadel, I mean, you got to feel good about the fact that Furman's got 2 games remaining at home. I guess 2 of the 4 to close they've got at home. So
yeah.
So I mean, yeah, you got to feel good about that.
Yeah, it's going to be a tight race down the stretch. Look,
Wofford's not. I mean, that's an away game, but they're not gonna. I guess they're not gonna have fans. So
yeah,
I don't know what a road game is in this season like this. I mean, I know Mercer allows fans, but it's interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be a race to the finish here in the Southern Conference in the regular season of basketball. John, all right, let's move now from basketball season. Look ahead. We've got spring foosball coming up. First time that I know of that we've ever had a spring college football season. And look, the FCS.
There's going to be a lot of first Saturday.
Yeah,
coldest opener, maybe? Is that for grabs?
When you to think that most teams start their season in August or September, yeah, I'd say this is probably the coldest opener for especially a team like Furman here at home. But got football, spring football coming up. Week 1 of the FCS season is upon us, John. Let's take a look at the Southern Conference and sort of go through the teams and some of the matchups that are going to be on the schedule for this first week. Just taking a look right here at home here in Greenville. Look, the Paladins are the favorites by far, I think. It's mainly by, Vegas. But I believe
Although there's some haters out there. There's some haters.
There are some haters. There's haters, but I think Furman is the favorite to win the league this year. But I also think Chattanooga and Wofford are not far behind. I think either one of those two teams, if Chattanooga decides to play football this spring,
that's a crazy situation because
yeah.
First, one of the problems is they don't own their stadium.
And we've talked about that.
And originally, renovations were scheduled for the spring because they have from my understanding, so like Greenville has the Greenville, I guess, United and Greenville Triumph. So they have Greenville Triumph is in the same division as they are in soccer. So that's and they draw really well at Finley Stadium. I think they might outdraw the football.
Right.
So they're wanting to make renovations for that, and then that's not sitting well, obviously, with Chattanooga, and I think there's a dispute over like COVID regulations and what the city says you can do and what the school's trying to allow, or by state law or whatever. But there's that dynamic, and then you got all these Chattanooga players. Several of them have gone into the transfer portal, most notably Bryce Nunley, who would have been their best weapon on special teams, an All-American wide receiver, set to finish his career out with a bunch of records as a receiver there, and now he's going to Western Michigan.
Yeah.
So they were all gung-ho to play in the fall, and now they're not so much.
Yeah. Their first game already postponed. It was supposed to be VMI this week, so now VMI and
they tried to schedule a game with Nebraska, and the Big Ten wouldn't let Nebraska schedule it.
That's right. And the only game that Chattanooga played back in the fall was that Western Kentucky game, in which they probably should have won, but
the phantom fair catch call by the guy not catching the ball, or whatever.
They'll never fair catch a kickoff.
And it was the Nunley guy that returned it. That was like the last act of his career at Chattanooga. He was
Chattanooga, and then he's transferred out, one of their best players. So just a bizarre situation for Chattanooga. I don't know where they're actually going to end up this season. But the first actual game that we're going to get, there's actually two at 1 o'clock on Saturday. Mercer at Wofford is a little bit intriguing. Now, Wofford's probably heavily favored. Not really sure, what the situation.
Not really sure what we got at quarterback on either side.
Yeah, both teams breaking in new signal callers under center. But look, Mercer, I feel like they're probably a pretty young team. They were last year, with some inexperience at quarterback. I'm sure Wofford's gonna they're gonna have guys, returning pieces from that team a year ago. Obviously, Joe Newman's not there. Their starter from the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So that's going to be every team that's trying to break in a new quarterback, and it seems like pretty much every team in the league is having to do that this spring, except for a couple.
Even there's like, okay, so there's quarterbacks returning with starting experience. If you want to count, like Hamp Sisson did technically start, I think, 4 games.
Yeah.
So that, but there's more often the case that you're breaking in a new guy. So like, let's use, for example, ETSU. They've been going into like every season for like the past 3 years with like a new guy. They're going to start a freshman. I think the only guy that is really there's two guys. BMI's quarterback, is coming back. He's got a lot of experience, and he's an All-American, set record for most passes thrown without an interception last year. And then you got Chris Oladokin from Samford, who, he split time with Liam Welch last year, but he was pretty much the starter for them. So those two programs are more settled than others at quarterback. And then you got a whole situation at Western where they brought in 4 transfers since the fall. So, I'm pretty sure that Clay Hendricks has no idea who's starting, for them.
Yeah. And look, let's go back to the matchup between these two schools last year, Mercer and Wofford. Wofford absolutely just destroyed Mercer in that game, 41-7, and that game was down in Macon. This year they have to travel up to Gibbs Stadium.
And that series, let me think about this. Okay, so Wofford is the only school Mercer has not beaten since moving to the Southern Conference or as a full member in 2014.
Wow.
So the series is 6-0 now. And the last 2 really haven't, or 3 haven't really even been close.
And look, Mercer's coming off a year in which they ranked, 7th in total offense and next to last in total defense.
They were 3rd from last in defense in the country or something crazy. They were. The
only thing worse in the SoCon in total defense was VMI.
And VMI, and they won
more games.
They won 4 games until I think they won 5 overall.
They were 5-7. VMI was 5-7. Mercer ended up 4-8.
But think if VMI had some semblance of a defense, they would have won 2 more games probably and been on the cusp of maybe winning a conference title.
Yeah.
That's how close. Their defense was that bad though. But their offense was that good is what's crazy about it.
Yeah. It wasn't. Look, and for Mercer, they had one of their best players, their quarterback, go down with that leg injury last year, and it just sort of threw a wrench into the offense. So now, trying to put all those pieces back together, I'm interested. I'm interested to see this Mercer team. Let's see, not Kalen Ryan. Let's see, who is that? Tyree Devison. Tyree Devison, is he back again this year for the Bears at running back?
List him on. See, that's the other thing is on their depth chart they have 2 positions of which I'm assuming is the A backs or whatever. They list them as jokers in their offense, but he's not on the pre-game whatever depth chart. DeAndre Johnson is who, and Devison played in the fall, so I don't know if he's injured or if he's just opted out or.
No doubt.
But he was one of the career active leading rushers in the conference, returning. Up there with Quay Holmes and Furman's Devin Wynn. So, if they have him, maybe not Saturday, but later on in the season, that's who their offense would be basically centered around, because you got to figure they got 2 quarterbacks. Harrison Frost has played. He's got pretty good experience. He started in 2018 when Furman played down at Mercer, which is the same night Furman's basketball team beat Villanova. Furman won the SoCon regular season title, yet did not, or a tie for it, and did not get in the playoffs. But that's another story for another day. despite beating Wofford 34-17 or 14 or something. Wofford got in, but anyway, I just think that he's got a little bit of experience. He played in the fall. Behind him, they don't have. I don't think. I think it's Carson Peavy is behind him, or Carter Peavy, and then Dylan Fromm, who is Jake Fromm's little brother. So, like, there's sort of the situation that Furman's in. A good amount of experience as a starter, but not
with anybody behind him. And then for Wofford, we mentioned losing Joe Newman, the quarterback. I mean, the leading rusher on the team, obviously the leading passer. But Wofford also lost their second leading rusher in Blake Morgan from a year ago. So Wofford's now got to try to replace not only the quarterback, but their two biggest rushing threats. Look, I'm sure.
I think they only returned 3 players on the offensive side of the ball.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Now, look, defensively, Wofford might
be pretty good.
They might be all right. Look, they were first in total defense. They're going to be fine. They were first in total defense in the league last year.
I think they have 7 or 8 back on defense. I'm pretty sure that's right.
Yeah, I think Wofford's defense will be fine. It's going to be interesting though to see what their offense looks like, and if they decide to throw it around like they did early in the year last year.
Looked at how many they've made, like several coaches, like 2 coaches. They lost their defensive coordinator,
and
they've lost,
and their head coach is trying to get a
trying to get it. Is that going to cause like where is Wofford's, like, where's the psychology of the team? We're talking about 18 to 22-year-olds, and my coach is trying to get out of town. Does that mean we're going to be bad? I mean, like, that's not a good look, I don't think. I mean, especially for one of the conference favorites. I can't. If I'm thinking about it, if Clay Hendricks were out there like lobbying for jobs, that wouldn't be a good look. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely something to watch for sure. And then also on Saturday, John, at 1:00, we get to see, which I think is a very intriguing matchup between Samford and ETSU. Samford coming off a 5-7 year last year, finished right in the middle of the league, and then ETSU, man, they couldn't get any worse than they were last year. 1-7.
They went from first to worst.
Yeah. You remember the Braves went from worst to first. Well, ETSU went from first to worst.
They reversed it, yeah.
ETSU, man, their only conference win was Mercer.
That probably led to the exit, of their former coach, Bobby Lamb. Especially when you consider Quay Holmes rushed for a school record 266 yards and 4 touchdowns in that game. So, they had like a revolving door at quarterback. Like Randy Sanders wasn't even sure, like, going into the first game at Appalachian State, like if that was going to be his starter. And then like on the second series, this guy gets like a grade 2 concussion and never played. Like he didn't play much the rest of the season.
Yeah.
So then they put, like, essentially the guy that we're going to start got hurt prior to the season and had to have like his shoulder reconstructed. Cade Weldon. And so they ended up playing Trey Mitchell, I believe, and Tyler Riddell.
Yeah.
Saw action in 4 games. Riddell's like threw for 6,500 yards at a school in Tampa prior to coming to ETSU, but he's not a very big guy, and I just don't feel like he's a guy. I think he's a very quarterback. if I'm ETSU fan, I'm worried about him taking some shots and how he'll withstand that,
Yeah, and like Trey Mitchell was the guy last year. Like he was just a freshman for ETSU, and he did the best he could. Now, I would try to give him a chance at the starting job this year, but
I don't know if he's with the program anymore.
Okay,
there you go. Okay. So like I think it's Riddell but the guy that everybody thought was going to be the starter, Cade Weldon,
Yeah.
who has like now a synthetic shoulder thing tendon. I think it's on his non-throwing arm. I could be wrong by saying that, but like, so that was the injury that kept him out last year. But apparently Riddell beat out Weldon, the transfer from Miami, whose dad Casey Weldon played at Florida State, I believe, and was a very good quarterback there. And so yeah, I mean, if ETSU solves their quarterback issues, their defense has kept them in pretty much every game under Randy Sanders. I mean, I think they've only lost
Yeah, they were
two
third.
games.
They were third in defense a year ago. That was not the problem. However, they were next to last in total offense. I mean, they just could not score, move the ball to save their life. Now, Quay Holmes that you mentioned was probably the one bright spot that they had on that offense a year ago. So they're going to need they need a piece at quarterback. That was what was missing
Yeah,
from that team last year. Defense
their
should be
offensive line was decent. I mean, I think. I think that I've heard from their play-by-play guy Jay Sandos, who does a great job, that maybe that Mitchell, he wasn't really expected to. He wasn't. I don't know if how much he expected to play or if he was expected to be in the mix. But there were only it limited the playbook. Like he didn't really have a good grasp of their playbook, so kind of and then like I think there were as a coaching staff there were only a certain amount of throws that they were going to put him in a situation to make.
get
I
this
mean,
stat.
not, I'm trying to be nice, but
Yeah,
like
get this stat, John. From last year, ETSU was worst in offensive first downs in the Southern Conference.
so they were facing a lot of third and long situations.
Yeah,
But
and
we're just giving
they were also
run the ball.
ETSU also the most penalized team in the Southern Conference a year ago. So clean that up.
Something about knowing the playbook and the snap count, maybe I don't know.
Clean that up. Maybe they have a chance. For Samford, they get a big piece coming back. You mentioned in Oladokin, the starting quarterback there, who just was instrumental in that offense a year ago. They're really their bright spot. It's kind of a tale of two different stories. You had a really bad offense and a good defense for ETSU, and then you
And a
look
really good
and then
offense
you
and
look
a
at
really
Stanford, you had a really good offense and just a terrible defense.
so this should make for an intriguing matchup.
Exactly.
Yeah, one of the guys that we should mention is Montrell Washington, a guy that he can make a play in space in a variety of different ways. He's one of those guys you just want to get the ball to in certain situations and let him have some open field and try and make a play. I know they used him. He's a wide receiver, but they used him a lot in running situations with like jet handoffs and things like that. Pretty speedy. They've got a young running back. I think is John Stanton.
Jay
Um,
Stanton. Jay Stanton.
Jay Stanton.
He was a freshman a year ago, so and look, it didn't play poorly. I mean, as a true freshman in that offense, where Oladokin's going to be the one that sort of gets the spotlight there,
and in their offensive scheme, to be quite honest, their offensive line's not going to have to hold blocks like you would normally. Like they've got a big enough offensive line, and they're going to move the ball. I mean, Mike Williams is a very good offensive lineman's back. So I think they're going to be pretty good on offense. Chris Hatcher's offenses are usually
they're always going to be pretty good. John, and then there's the final game, the finale for the SoCon schedule, and that's the game right here in the upstate, here in Greenville, South Carolina. It's Western Carolina's coming down from the mountains to take on the Furman Paladins. We already mentioned Furman as probably the favorites to win the league this year. And honestly, look, no disrespect to Western Carolina and that program, but they've been down for several years now.
It hasn't been the offense. I mean, it's been like the same. It's been the defensive side of the ball has been I know you and I laughed earlier because College Football News did like a preview on the Western game, and they were saying like the offense was the problem. Not I would say completely opposite
Well,
of what.
if you look statistically from last year, John, Western Carolina was last in scoring offense, last
But
last in total offense.
yes,
They were last in total.
you're defeating my argument here.
They were last in scoring defense. However, they were sixth in total defense. So not all bad,
Well,
but
they made the funny thing is they actually made an improvement at the Furman game last year. I don't know if you remember. They played well on defense in that game. They just couldn't move. Furman didn't allow them to. I think they had like 33
yeah, it was
yards.
only. I mean, Furman. They held Furman to 28 points, which I mean, Furman was the leading scoring team offense in the SoCon last year, and they held them to 28. But yeah, to mention that Furman wouldn't let them move the ball or score.
No, like they had like 33 yards in the second half or something crazy, or like up until the last drive. So I don't know what to expect. I do know this. I think what affected them last year was not having Tyree Adams. Like Tyree Adams got suspended or something happened for like 2 games, and they play Will Jones, and like things aren't going well, and so
they almost lose to North Greenville because.
Yeah, that was a yikes moment. And North Greenville will take nothing away. They're very
good. Yeah, they're good.
Yeah, but Western shouldn't lose to North Greenville.
Yeah, to a D2 school.
So, I mean, one of the interesting dynamics, like if the kid from Penn, Glover, I think his name is, very good, 3-star coming out of high school, was the guy for Penn, I think, and the Ivy League just said like, I think they said like last January they weren't playing this year, so even in the spring. So I mean, they just canceled everything in the Ivy League, and so that guy was like, "Well, I'm going to go play somewhere I can play, right away." And Western was a perfect opportunity, and I think he fits more of their offense than maybe Will Jones because of he's kind of more of a dual threat, and he's pretty quick and speedy, but he's also got a pretty good arm. So
yeah,
I mean, Western has some weapons on offense too.
They've got some pieces, and they showed some. Look, they played a brutal 3 games in the spring or however, but they had some flashes. They had some flashes of success. But look, if I'm Furman, and again, not taking anything away from Western Carolina. But if I'm Furman, I couldn't have asked for a better opponent to open the season with.
Well, I mean, Furman, the way Furman's schedule kind of sets up, I mean, I think VMI is going to be pretty good test. But if you're picking teams, to go back to back, you're going to pick probably Western Carolina, maybe probably VMI. I mean,
yeah,
and then they go as. It's going to be interesting. I think, was it Western, VMI, I believe either Samford and then ETSU maybe, or vice versa. But that's not a bad opening 4 games. Now, obviously,
Furman's schedule is pretty backloaded, obviously, with Whopper, the Citadel, Chattanooga on that backside. So it's going to be maybe Furman could open up great in the first half of the season.
They'd go 4-4.
Yeah. I mean, Furman. We joked about it. We were joking about it, John. We both think Furman's going to win the conference.
They'll be okay. I think they're undefeated in sunny weather.
Yeah, we both think Furman will win the conference, but. We were joking that Furman's had their issues with having high expectations and then just completely blowing those. So,
I mean, speaking of maybe peaking too early, certainly that Samford game, if you could have just ended the season there last year, I think that would be pretty spectacular. But, after the ETSU game, which is kind of like, I think the Samford game was actually after the ETSU game last year.
It was.
So it's kind of funny because I thought, and then like the rest of the season, like somebody pulled out the ETSU film and was like, hey, let's. No, I don't think anyone looked at the Sanford film for defensive purposes.
Yeah.
Unless how not to play Furman.
58-14 now.
Right. Like, I don't think any defensive coordinator was like, let's just look at the Sanford film, no, probably not. But I think maybe you hear this talked about some in football as like it's about like your third or fourth game that defensive coordinators start to pick up on stuff that maybe you weren't doing before, they weren't prior to that. So I think Billy Taylor, who's a very experienced defensive coordinator, it's my hypothesis that in that game in ETSU had a very good defense, but I think they did some things that other teams may have picked up on as the season wore on.
Yeah, I agree. Talking about Furman, they're going to have to replace
except Sanford.
Except for Sanford.
They did not pull the ETSU game,
and except for VMI because they dropped 60 VMI.
Yeah. So don't know what VMI and Sanford were doing.
For the Paladins though, they've got their big key for them. I think offensively is going to be the run game. They've got all 5 starters back on the offensive line. They've got 2 of I think the best backs in the league. Devin Wynn.
I think they're among their running backs returning. Yeah. They have like maybe the most rushing yards returning of at least in the top 5 of anybody in the country.
Yeah, I think the run game is going to be the strong point for the Furman offense. And look, I think they'll be all right. I think Hamp Sisson will be fine in the pass game. He's got some experience. He's played. He's started. The thing I'm a little worried about is they're going to have to find a replacement for Thomas Gordon at wide receiver. Maybe it's DeLuca, but they're going to have somebody step up at wide receiver.
Kelton Gunn is a guy that I'm thinking, he's a young guy. Noah Henderson, a transfer from UNC Charlotte. That'll be interesting to see what he was. I think he was a 3-star, and Furman. The reason he came back to Furman was, I think he had several offers, maybe like 12 or 13, but Furman was the first to recruit him. It didn't work out at Charlotte. He comes, back to Furman. So I'm not saying he's going to be Thomas Gordon, but I think this year where Furman is going to have a maybe compensates for not having a guy like Gordon is having very capable tight ends. And I think that could be, which interestingly enough is also a strength for Western, Owen Kosinski, but he was a guy that came into last year that was an All-American, but he didn't have quite the numbers he had the year before, but very good tight end. But I think that'll be a strength for Furman. But, I wouldn't be shocked if a guy like Devin Wynn was their leading receiver.
Could be coming out of the back.
Him wide.
Yeah.
Or Wayne Anderson. Both are very good hands, and you could split out and very good speed. So.
Yeah. We'll see, but they're going to need somebody to step up in the pass game.
I think the defense is what I'm most excited.
The defense is going to be. Look, they get Adrian Hope back. I mean, they've got they got some dudes on that defense.
Yeah.
They were very good last year. I expect they'll be even better this year. Especially, I think they'll be a little bit more experienced on the back end in secondary. Yeah. But look, they're a force in the run stopping game and the pass rushing. They'll have to get a little bit better than that. They didn't really I didn't think was great at times rushing the passer.
Well, a lot of that was teams were loading up. I mean, there were double teaming Hope because he had 15 sacks the year before, so they knew kind of when he was on the field what was happening, and then they knew when they made a change at Bandit that Furman was probably, expecting to run and see, like, against the Citadel, it made it tough, or teams that ran the ball a lot, because you kind of have to figure out the situations in which you're trying to get hope on the field, and how the Citadel also blocked that play was pretty good. I mean, they were running sort of to his side when he's running upfield, and that dynamic will probably work itself out, because I think the 3 deep at that position is loaded now. I mean, you got Elijah McCoy, who I said, was all SoCon a couple of years ago, and then all freshman team, Josh Agnew is, all 3 of those guys are they're 3 of the better tacklers and defenders on the
defense. So. I think defense is going to be just key for Furman. They're going to be so good on that side of the ball. Really, look, Clay Hendricks has said that he expects him to be pretty good this year, and Clay doesn't really say things like that very often. So I'm excited to watch this Furman team. All right, John. With that said, let's move into our very first pick'em section for this FCS spring season. We'll pick we've got 10 games here. We'll pick the 3 SoCon games at the end.
By the way, did you see the ending of I watched it today, McNeese State and Tarleton State, because I don't get Fox. So it was like 20. This was like prior to like Snowmageddon that hit Texas at Tarleton State. So it was like in the 20s last week, and like in the last 7 minutes, McNeese State ties it to send it. And it's, the quarterback at McNeese State is Orgeron. I mean, I guess his son, I don't know, like her nephew or something, but I'm sitting there, and Orgeron's the quarterback, and he throws he gets him back in the game. They had Pettigrew, the wide receiver that transferred from LSU. So they come back and win in overtime. But just what a way to start off the FCS season with a thriller. And really, a Tarleton State team, their quarterback was actually a transfer from Western Kentucky, who was a quarterback at Ashley Ridge High School down there in Charleston. So interesting connection there. So anyway, just all that being said, very good game to start the season. And hopefully that'll continue tomorrow night. I mean, there's a big game.
Absolutely. And we're going to start with that one, John. First up on the schedule tomorrow night, we're going to start outside of the SoCon, around the FCS. South Dakota State taking on Northern Iowa. You got the Jackrabbits taking on the Panthers in a big Missouri Valley opening game. Both teams ranked in the top 10 at the end of the year last year. I mean, both teams are just powerhouses in that conference. Unfortunately, they play in the same conference as North Dakota State, and the 8-time defending.
So they're all playing for second.
Yes. Pretty much. But look, this is going to be a great game tomorrow, 8 p.m. I don't believe it's going to be televised. You're going to have to get it on ESPN Plus, or maybe
probably some obscure network.
I guess if you lived in Iowa, there's maybe some local television station that'll host it, but you'll have to watch it on ESPN Plus.
The local Cedar Rapids, Cedar Falls, or
wherever they're located at. So, you're taking, John, who you like? You like the Jackrabbits? You like the Panthers?
Hey man, I'm gonna tell you, I know a lot of people on this FCS Nation show they all picked South Dakota State. I mean, UNI Dome is a tough place. That place is gonna be, well, I guess it won't be crazy since of COVID, but it's still one of the tougher places to play in FCS football. I'm going Northern Iowa with the win that one.
We're gonna disagree right off the bat. I'm actually gonna take the Jackrabbits.
John Stiglmeier's Jackrabbits.
I am. Look, I liked. I was able to watch a couple of their games last year.
Sanders is their quarterback. He's a very good quarterback.
The game where I believe it was last year where game day actually went to South Dakota State. Yeah,
It was North Dakota
State. It was North Dakota State versus South Dakota State. Look, North Dakota State ended up winning that game. It is what it is. I mean, North Dakota State's the Alabama of FCS football. Let's just be honest here. But I was impressed. I thought South Dakota State played well. This is a team that was in the playoffs last year. It's incredible to me.
That was the game. Remember that game? Their starting freshman quarterback was really, really good. He nearly beat Minnesota early in that year. He gets injured in that game, and is a season ender, I think. I think it's a knee injury. They ended up the season. I want to say this is right. They ended up starting a guy by the end of that campaign that was a wide receiver or a tight end at quarterback. That's how much the injury bug ended up biting them.
Yeah. In this matchup last year, John, I don't want this to scare you or anything, but in this matchup last year, South Dakota State beat Northern Iowa 38-7.
Yeah, but that was at South Dakota State.
You're right. That was at Dana J. Whitehouse Stadium
2 years ago, probably like 400. It's probably like 600 days ago or something.
Yeah, at that point. So we're going to disagree there. I'm going to take the Jackrabbits. You like Northern Iowa to win that one. All right, John.
I'm going old school Gateway.
Old school, yeah.
I don't know anything about that. Sorry about. South Dakota State was still Division II or something back then when there was a Gateway.
When you and I was winning national championship.
Yeah. For all those FCS people out there.
From the Missouri Valley to the Colonial Athletic Association.
What's known as the what? Can you get it?
I don't know.
It's actually had 2 distinctions in its history. One of them is Atlantic 10. The other
is the Atlantic 10.
Yankee Conference. The Yankee Conference back in the 90s.
I like it. James Madison, the runner-ups from a year ago in the national championship game, gets set to host Morehead State, John, and the Dukes of James Madison are like a 40-point favorite in this game over Morehead State. Any way that Morehead State pulls off a stunner up in Harrisonburg, Virginia?
No. Pioneer League is not going. Not like, I don't know. They may give scholarships now, but the funny thing is the first App State game that I was at as a undergrad at App State in 2003 was against Morehead State, and I'm like, we're gonna absolutely just walk all over these guys, and we ended up winning with like a game-winning field goal, and like it was embarrassing, but we went on to have a decent year, but Morehead State's nowhere close in this game.
Yeah. Not at all. Yeah, James Madison.
I'm thinking James Madison might cover.
Yeah, that 40-point spread. I agree. The Dukes, man, first step on their way to trying to avenge their national championship loss from a year ago. All right, John, back over to the Missouri Valley where the Salukis of Southern Illinois are taking on North Dakota, 1 o'clock on Saturday.
North Dakota. I mean, the boys from Carbondale are never an easy matchup. Southern Illinois is one of those teams that, they're always solid. I mean, they're not necessarily, they're sort of like the Iowa of FCS football. They're usually pretty good, but they're not great. Like, you're not going to routinely see them winning 10, 11 games.
Right.
Interesting tie-in with Western Carolina was Southern Illinois was the team that beat Western Carolina like 43-7 in the 1983 national championship.
Just pulling out the stats everywhere, John.
North Dakota, they're tricky because they're solid. That's a solid program. They're no North Dakota State, of course, but I'm going to go Southern Illinois on the road.
I like it. I like the Salukis pick. if I believe correctly, the Carolina Panthers took a player from Southern Illinois in the draft
Yes,
last year,
Jeremy.
Jeremy Chin, who
Yes,
had a fantastic rookie year this year, by the way. I mean,
yes,
just
that was a
absolutely
good game.
fantastic. So
He
because of
was.
that,
I think he led the. I want to say he led the FCS in interceptions. I'm pretty sure that's right.
he had a couple. He had quite a few in his rookie year at Carolina. So because of that, because of Jeremy Chin, I'm going to take the Salukis on the road against the
The,
Fighting Hawks of
the
North
Egyptian dogs.
Dakota.
That's Saluki.
Yeah.
Egyptian dog.
All right, John. It's a North Carolina battle. Former SoCon teams. Well, one was a SoCon team in basketball, but a former SoCon team in football as well. We got Davidson at Elon at 1:30
Wow.
on Saturday.
Wow. You know, this is a rematch of the 2008 Southern Conference Basketball Championship when Steph Curry went up against I think it was like an 8 or a 9. I believe Elon was the 9 seed and played through from the first day of the tournament. Luck ran out for I believe it was Matt Matheny's squad. See, Matt Matheny used to be the assistant for Bob McKillop for a long time at Davidson. So he carried Elon, I think in his first year, to the championship game. The score was like 62-49. So anyway, Davidson is a dumpster fire as a football program.
Hey, they were 8-4. They were 8-4 last year. I wouldn't say dumpster fire.
Who was they played again? Did they play Valpo and like who, like Valpo and Siena? I don't even know what conference.
They beat Georgetown. I didn't know Georgetown had a football.
Well, okay, so there was a game last year where the two teams. Where's the craziest score on their schedule? They rushed for like the two teams rushed for like 1,000 yards combined. Davidson had 700 and something rushing yards in a game. I don't know if that was last year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see maybe Morehead State because that was a 42-31 game, but I don't see anything that's like super crazy.
There was a 72-38 or 72 to.
It wasn't last year.
Maybe that was 2 years ago. But Elon, you know, they're at Rhodes Stadium. You know, they'll be at home before a crowd of a few, even without COVID. So Elon's a pretty good program. I think, you know.
Look, they play in a tough conference. The CAA, man, it's tough.
They may. I think they win that one by 3 or 4 touchdowns. That's my guess.
Hey, they beat the Citadel last year. Remember that was one of the big upsets that we were like, what? How did the Citadel end up losing that game? But I like Elon.
Then it got not so surprising. They did beat Furman, but
yeah, I like the Phoenix as well against Davidson. All right, John, let's move down to the southwest-ish area. We got Northwestern State, the Demons, taking on Lamar.
Yeah, you know, Lamar was in the playoffs back in 2018. Northwestern State, I want to say they got a new head coach, but I'm not absolutely sure on that. Northwestern State, you know, back in the late 90s were a very good program. They're in the Southland Conference.
Was that when Coach O was playing defensive lineman?
Yeah, it was right around that time. So, like, for what, you know, they played Apps. That was 1998. They knocked App State out of the quarterfinals of the FCS playoffs. So they were really good during that span of time. They've fallen off, you know, they haven't been consistently really that good ever really since
then.
You know, the century flip there. But
I'm pretty sure Joe Burrow threw like 700 yards against them the other like last year. Yeah.
Yeah, in like the first quarter. No, I'm just kidding. I'm gonna go Lamar in this one because I think they're pretty talented. You know, I don't know if there will be a playoff team again, but Furman should have been in the playoffs over Lamar. I'm sorry if I offended any Lamar fans.
John's taking the Cardinals. I'm going to disagree. I think the Demons get it
Going
done.
demonic on us.
Going. I don't want to say that.
No, that's true. You probably should say that.
Yeah, but no, I'm going to take Northwestern State on the road in a big South.
Would you change your mascot if it was a demon? Or would you rather be Blue Devil?
Yeah, the Blue Devils. Not really any difference there, is there?
Right? Is there? Yeah, true. Demon Deacons.
Yeah.
At least you got Deacon in the.
You're right. All right, John, to the OVC, the Ohio Valley Conference, where this particular team, one of these teams, played quite a bit in the fall. Actually, was the first college football game of the fall season. Austin Peay makes its return to the football field.
The Govs
against Tennessee Tech.
Who? Tennessee Tech, an interesting
the
story.
Golden
about them.
Eagles.
They really got things going, and they've got a quarterback there. I want to say his name is Fisher. Is it Brandon or Bradley Fisher, who is now, I believe, a junior in that program, and he's actually turned out to be that program is turning the corner. You remember they had that remarkable comeback against Samford back when we played football last.
Yes.
They were down by 17 points, like with 3 minutes left, and tied it, and it went to overtime.
I remember that was a game. That was one of those games where, like, Tennessee Tech hadn't won a game or like been competitive,
right. And they were literally they had not won a game in like 3 years. They were like 2 in their last 25 games.
Yeah.
This is an intriguing matchup because I think Tennessee Tech's actually going to be decent. I could be wrong, but it's not far between Clarksville and Cookeville, which is, Austin Peay still got a little bit of the pedigree from the playoff run they had back in 2019.
They absolutely stomped Furman in that playoff last year.
Tell me about it. That was rough.
Yeah. Again, in the rain. Furman playing well in the rain.
But then, it was a driving rainstorm there at Fort Terry. Not only that, there was a weather delay in December or whatever. And so that's a forgettable moment. But Grayson Atkins played well. Tennessee Tech, I just think Austin Peay, I think it's a competitive game, but I like the Governors to get the win there.
The Governors. I was disappointed that they lost to Central Arkansas. Remember, we picked that game against Central Arkansas to start the fall season, and
Mr. Monopoly on the helmet.
Yeah, Mr. Monopoly, man. Yeah, I'm going to take the Governors as well on the road. Tennessee Tech getting better, but I still don't think they're going to be quite on the level where Austin Peay is right now. All right, John, one final game before we get into our SoCon picks. It's the defending national champion from the last 7 years. North Dakota State's taking on Youngstown State. The Penguins are headed up to Fargo to take on the Bison.
There's no Bo Pelini to be escorted out of the
Bo Pelini is gone.
For the cops this time. For getting on.
And Jim Tressel's not walking through the door either.
Jim Tressel's not walking through the door anytime soon. John Haycock was the coach there. He's he was the defensive coordinator at maybe Ohio State for a while. Anyway, none of those guys are going to be in play here. So North Dakota State, no Trey Lance or with Trey Lance.
Yeah, who's going to be the quarterback now for the Bison? No Trey Lance, no Carson Wentz. Who they got? Who are they going to pull out next?
No Easton Stick. I mean, who's the guy? It's next man up in Fargo, which I think they'd appreciate the fact that during the spring season they'll never appreciate their dome more than they appreciated this year.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't see. I don't think Youngstown State's very good. I'm sorry
They,
if I offended
they,
any of
beat,
you get
they
out
beat
there.
Samford last year.
Yeah, who did? I mean, no offense to
Who did?
like right. So yeah, like if you, I mean, that's not. Samford had a very unique. Well, the Citadel didn't beat them. Um, so and that was a like a basketball score
Yeah.
game. Uh, so I'm gonna go. Yeah, I don't think it's very close. I don't think Youngstown State to me, if we're gonna talk about overrated teams in FCS here and then you're out, Youngstown State's one of those teams.
All right.
I
So
do realize it's not been that long since they went to a national championship because they did play. They got boat raced by James Madison in the only championship that North Dakota State hadn't won in like the last decade.
I'm real quick. I mean, just real simple. North Dakota State wins this one. Question though is North Dakota State beat Youngstown State by 39 on the road last year. Is that a bigger margin at home in the Fargo Dome this year, or does Youngstown State close that gap a little bit?
No.
Okay, all right.
Worse. It's worse.
It's worse. It's worse. They're just gonna just bomb.
They're gonna knock the Y right off those orange helmets.
Yeah. That little penguin.
With scarf on. That's such an intimidating mascot, by the way.
I love it. All right, John. All right, here's our SoCon picks now. Going to start off with the Mercer-Wofford game. Wofford, the defending champions of the Southern Conference from a year ago. Mercer, a lot of question marks to be answered with them. I mean, a lot of question marks with Wofford as well, especially on the offensive side. So who gets the season started off in the right direction, the Bears or the Terriers?
Well, Gibbs Stadium will be rocking Saturday. I'm just kidding.
With a total of 0 people.
Right. Maybe some family and friends and blankets.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think, I think Mercer has the potential to keep it close, maybe early. I just think Wofford's, they're too good. They have they had a pretty good recruiting class. I think you'll see a lot of new faces, but I expect them to get the job done and win by a couple touchdowns. Something I'm thinking along the lines of 31-14, something like that.
Yeah, I like Wofford. I just think defensively they're just too good, and there's too many unknowns with Mercer.
Peyton Derrick, I think, will be the starter at quarterback, but they'll probably play a couple of guys.
Yeah, and look, I hope Mercer has a better year than they did last year. There's just too many unknowns, especially on the offensive side of the ball for them with quarterback. I'm going to go with Wofford as well. Also at 1 o'clock tomorrow, John, we talked about it. This one's probably the most intriguing matchup of the day. Samford at ETSU. Do you like the Dogs or do you like the Bucks?
Hatch attack versus I don't know what Randy said.
One of the best offenses versus one of the best defenses.
I think it's going to be close, but I'm going to go Samford 24-20. I think the difference in the matchup is the experience of quarterback. I think ETSU will be very improved. I think they're capable of winning the game. I just think that Samford goes on the road and gets the win.
Yeah, I had a hard time with this one. I almost picked Samford, but I'm going to go with ETSU.
Buckyball.
I'm going to go with Buckyball, but I'm going more so because of the defense. I think that gives ETSU a little bit more of an edge. Not taking anything away from Samford, from Oladokin's offense, and what they can do. They can score, and they can score in bunches. But I saw that ETSU team do that defense do to Furman on the road. They held that Furman to 17 points in a very close game, and did some really good things against the Paladins last year. Maybe a new quarterback is what ETSU needs this year to kind of to spark them a little bit offensively. They've got to figure out something offensively. I honestly think it probably comes down. I think ETSU kicks a late field goal. Maybe, I don't know. I'm going to go 17-14, John.
I think the difference is Keltner with the long field goal to win it.
The long field goal.
A la J.J. German, who hit a long field goal to beat a ranked, like a number 15 Samford team. I want to say it was 15-14 back in 2016.
Nice.
So
there you go. You're gonna take the Bucks. All right, John. Final one. Here right at home, it's Western Carolina coming to Greenville, taking on the Paladins.
Back in 1983, Western came to Furman in the semifinals of the FCS playoffs and beat Furman and tore down the goalpost at Paladin Stadium. That won't happen on Saturday.
Furman, I fully expect Furman to win by at least 3.
I know the goalpost won't get taken down.
Not by Western Carolina.
Not by either side, but like. Yeah. Secondly, I expect Furman to win pretty convincingly.
Yeah.
And that's, obviously I don't know anything until they play, but based on on paper, this is a pretty good Furman team. And I just think that, I think it will benefit Western a little bit to have played in the fall. I just don't think it'll benefit them enough to be able to overcome what I think is a pretty good Furman team. So
I
think the score is 35-10, something like that.
Yeah, I think Furman wins by at least 3 touchdowns, if not more. I expect them to fully go out there and dominate Western Carolina. It's going to be. I feel like it's going to be a long fall. A long spring for the Catamounts, and it's not going to get started.
They're pretty good at baseball.
Yeah, maybe baseball. Furman doesn't even have baseball anymore, so
no. So I can't really, unfortunately. They'll always be better than Furman in baseball from now on.
From now on, exactly.
They normally were anyway. But
yeah, exactly. Well, John, it's finally arrived, man. Spring football is here this weekend. We get SoCon football, FCS football back. It's going to be a great weekend. Have to get on ESPN Plus and check out a bunch of these games on Saturday, and really looking forward to it, man. Got some good basketball this weekend as well, getting down the stretch of the regular season there. So we've got a lot of stuff going on right now in the world of sports, especially college sports.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to have like the overlap season and the spring. I'd never, they say frost's on the pumpkin. You want to be playing your best football. I guess by the time that flowers bloom this year, you'll want to be playing your best football.
Yeah, exactly. Well, for SoCon John Hooper, I am Cameron Tarrant. Make sure to go over on Twitter and on Facebook and follow the Spread podcast on both of those social media outlets. Thanks for everybody watching live here on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, wherever you were able to watch us tonight. This has been The Spread.